romance, prose fiction. 3 languages. How Arthur by the mean of Merlin gat Excalibur his sword of. The Lady of the Lake, illustration. For La Mort d'Arthur, J. M. Dent and Company, London, 1893-1894, by Aubrey Beardsley. See also, historical novel, historical romance, historical fantasy, historical fiction, and romance novel. Not to be confused with romance novel. Romance is a fictitious narrative in prose or verse, the interest of which turns upon marvelous and uncommon incidents. This genre contrasted with the main tradition of the novel, which realistically depict life. 1. These works frequently, but not exclusively, take the form of the historical novel. 2. Walter Scott describes romance as a kindred term. 3. And many European languages do not distinguish between romance and novel. A novel is le roman, der roman, il romanzo. 4. There is a second type of romance, genre fiction love romances, where the primary focus is on love and marriage. 5. The term romance is now mainly used to refer to this type. And for other fiction it is now chiefly archaic and historical. OED. Works of fiction such as Wuthering Heights, 6, and Jane Eyre, 7, 8, combine elements from both types of romance. The terms romance novel and historical romance are ambiguous, because the words romance and romantic can have different meanings. For example, romance can refer to either romantic love, or the character or quality that makes something appeal strongly to the imagination, and sets it apart from everyday life and is associated with adventure, heroism, chivalry, etc. OED. The latter sense connects it with the Romantic movement, and the Gothic novel, as well as to the medieval romance tradition. 9. Though the genre has a long history that includes the ancient Greek novel. 10. In addition to Walter Scott, other romance writers, as defined by Scott, include the Brontes, E.T.A. Hoffmann, Victor Hugo, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Robert Louis Stevenson, and Thomas Hardy. Later examples are Joseph Conrad, John Cowper Powys, J.R.R. Tolkien and A. Esbit. Definition, edit. The American novelist Nathaniel Hawthorne described a romance as being radically different from a novel by not being concerned with the possible or probable course of ordinary experience. 11. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. The term romance is applied across a number of genres, including the love romance novel, the historical novel, the adventure novel, and scientific romance, an older term for what is now called science fiction. Works of nautical fiction can also be romances, as the genre often overlaps with historical romance, adventure fiction, and fantasy stories. The more modern term historical fantasy covers one sort of romance. The following are the 2 main definitions relating to literature found in the Oxford English Dictionary. A fictitious narrative, usually in prose, in which the settings or the events depicted are remote from everyday life, or in which sensational or exciting events or adventures form the central theme, a book, etc., containing such a narrative. Now chiefly archaic and historical. A story of romantic love, ESP. One which deals with love in a sentimental or idealized way, a book, film, etc., with a narrative or story of this kind. Also as mass noun, literature of this kind. Overlap is also sometimes found between the above terms, when literary romance also contains a strong love interest. Examples include Wuthering Heights, 12, and Jane Eyre, 13, 14. And in other words, with the rise of realism in the novel, the romance began to be considered a less serious and more frivolous genre, so that in the 20th century the term romantic novel is often used disparagingly, to imply a contrast with a realist novel. The term gradually came to mean any fiction remote from the conditions and concerns of everyday life. In this sense, romance is a broad term which can include or overlap with such genres as the historical novel or fantasy. In popular culture, however, a romance has come to mean specifically a love story, in which a happy ending follows a series of vicissitudes. 15. As noted above, a relationship exists between romance and fantasy, something which arises in particular because of the relationship between this type of novel and medieval chivalric romances. The most common fantasy world is one based on medieval Europe, and has been since William Morris used it in his early fantasy works, such as The Well at the World's End. 16, and particularly since the 1954 publication of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings. Such a world is often called pseudo-medieval, particularly when the writer has snatched up random elements from the era, which covered 1,000 years and a continent, and thrown them together without consideration for their compatibility, or even introduced ideas not so much based on the medieval era as on romanticized views of it. When these worlds are copied not so much from history as from other fantasy works, there is a heavy tendency to uniformity and lack of realism. 17. The full width and breadth of the medieval era is seldom drawn upon. Governments, for instance, tend to be uncompromisingly feudal-based, or evil empires or oligarchies, usually corrupt, while there was far more variety of rule in the actual Middle Ages. 18. Fantasy worlds also tend to be economically medieval, and disproportionately pastoral. 19. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Medieval romance, edit. As a literary genre of high culture, heroic romance or chivalric romance is a type of prose and verse narrative that was popular in the noble courts of high medieval and early modern Europe. They were fantastic stories about marvel-filled adventures, often of a chivalric knight-errant, portrayed as having heroic qualities, who goes on a quest. The word medieval also evokes distressed damsels, dragons, and other romantic tropes. 20. It developed further from the epics as time went on. In particular, the emphasis on love and courtly manners distinguishes it from the chanson de geste and other kinds of epic, in which masculine military heroism predominates. 21. Later influence, edit. Edward Dowden argued that Shakespeare's late comedies should be called romances, because they resemble late medieval and early modern chivalric romance. 22. The rise of the modern novel as an alternative to the chivalric romance began with Miguel de Cervantes, and, especially with Don Quixote, 1605, 1615. 23. Initially seen as a comedy satirizing chivalry, in the 19th century it was seen as a social commentary, but no one could easily tell whose side Cervantes was on. Many critics came to view the work as a tragedy in which Don Quixote's Idealism and nobility are viewed by the post-chivalric world as insane, and are defeated and rendered useless by common reality. 24. While the modern literary fiction romance was influenced by medieval romance via the Gothic novel, and the interest of Romantic writers in the medieval period, William Morris and J.R.R. Tolkien were directly influenced by medieval literature. In the 19th century, William Morris wrote a series of imaginative fictions usually referred to as the prose romances, 25, 26, which were attempts to revive the genre of medieval romance, and written in imitation of medieval prose. These novels, including The Wood Beyond the World and The Well at the World's End, have been credited as important milestones in the history of fantasy fiction, because, while other writers wrote of foreign lands, or of dream worlds, or the future, as Morris did in News from Nowhere, Morris's works were the first to be set in an entirely invented fantasy world. 27. On its publication, The Well at the World's End was praised by H. G. Wells, who compared the book to Malory and admired its writing style. 28. Although the novel is relatively obscure by today's standards, it has had a significant influence on many notable fantasy authors. C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien both seem to have found inspiration in. Tolkien objected to The Lord of the Rings being called a novel, as he viewed it as a heroic romance. 29. Literary critics also apply the term high fantasy to The Lord of the Rings. 30. While fantasy is, generally speaking, not significant in the works of romance writers, Walter Scott's definition includes marvelous and uncommon incidents. Hawthorne, as noted above, also explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Matthew Lewis, The Monk. 1795. Described romance as not being concerned with the possible or probable course of ordinary experience. Gothic novel, edit. See also, Dark Romanticism, American Gothic fiction, and Gothic fiction contemporary developments in Germany, France and Russia. From 1764, with the Horace Walpole's Gothic novel The Castle of Otranto, the romance genre experienced a revival. Other important works are Anne Radcliffe's The Mysteries of Udolpho, 1794, and Monk Lewis's The Monk, 1795. In the preface of the second edition, Walpole claims The Castle of Otranto is an attempt to blend the two kinds of romance, the ancient and the modern. He defines the ancient romance as being defined by its fantastic nature, its imagination and improbability, while defining the modern romance as being more deeply rooted in literary realism, a strict adherence to common life in his words. 31. By combining fantastic situations, helmets falling from the sky, walking portraits, etc., with supposedly real people acting in a natural manner, Walpole created a new and distinct style of literary fiction, which has frequently been cited as a template for all subsequent Gothic novels. 32, 33. The Monthly Review stated that for those who can digest the absurdities of Gothic fiction, Otranto offered considerable entertainment. 34. The Castle of Otranto is widely regarded as the first Gothic novel, and, with its knights, villains, wronged maidens, haunted corridors and things that go bump in the night, is the spiritual godfather of Frankenstein and Dracula, the creaking floorboards of Edgar Allan Poe and the shifting stairs and walking portraits of Harry Potter's Hogwarts. Strawberry Hill, Horace Walpole's fantasy castle, to open its doors again, The Guardian. 35. Charles Dickens was influenced by Gothic fiction and incorporated Gothic imagery, settings and plot devices in his works. 36. Victorian Gothic moved from castles and abbeys into contemporary urban environments, in particular London, in Oliver Twist, and Bleak House. 37. Great Expectations contains elements of the Gothic genre, especially Miss Havisham, the bride frozen in time, and the ruined Satis house filled with weeds and spiders. 38. Other characters linked to this genre include the aristocratic Bentley Drummle, because of his extreme cruelty, Pip himself, who spends his Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Youth chasing a frozen beauty, the monstrous Orlick, who systematically attempts to murder his employers. Then there is the fight to the death between Compeyson and Magwitch, and the fire that ends up killing Miss Havisham, scenes dominated by horror, suspense, and the sensational. 39. Historical romance, edit. Historical romance, also historical novel, is a broad category of fiction in which the plot takes place in a setting located in the past. Walter Scott helped popularize this genre in the early 19th century. Literary fiction historical romances continue to be published, and a notable recent example is Wolf Hall, 2009, a multi-award-winning novel by English historical novelist Hilary Mantel. It is also a genre of mass-market fiction, which is related to the broader romantic love genre. Walter Scott, edit. Walter Scott with Waverley, 1814, invented the true historical novel. 40. At the same time he was influenced by Gothic romance, and had collaborated in 1801 with Monk Lewis on Tales of Wonder. 40. With his Waverley novels Scott hoped to do for the Scottish border what Goethe and other German poets had done for the Middle Ages, and make its past live again in modern romance. 41. Scott's novels are in the mode he himself defined as romance, the interest of which turns upon marvelous and uncommon incidents. 42. He used his imagination to re-evaluate history by rendering things, incidents and protagonists in the way only the novelist could do. Scott, the novelist, resorted to documentary sources as any historian would have done, but as a romantic he gave his subject a deeper imaginative and emotional significance. 42. By combining research with marvelous and uncommon incidents, Scott attracted a far wider market than any historian could, and was the most famous novelist of his generation, throughout Europe. 40. Scott influenced many 19th-century British novelists, including Edward Bulwer-Lytton, Charles Kingsley, and Robert Louis Stevenson, and those who wrote for children, like Charlotte Yonge and Gia Henty. 43. Walter Scott had an immense impact throughout Europe. His historical fiction created for the first time a sense of the past as a place where people thought, felt and dressed differently. 44. His historical romances influenced Balzac, Dostoevsky, Flaubert, Tolstoy, Dumas, Pushkin, and many others, and his interpretation of history was seized on by Romantic nationalists, particularly in Eastern Europe. 45. Auguste Jean-Baptiste de Falconpret, 1767–1843, the principal French translator of the Waverley novels, played a pivotal role in the diffusion of Scott's work throughout Europe. In Italy, Poland, Russia, and Spain they were widely read long before indigenous versions appeared. 46. The reception of Sir Walter Scott in Europe, edited by Murray Pittock, has articles on Scott's influence on the novels throughout Europe, including France, Spain, Austria, Germany, Russia, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Poland, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. 47. See also, Other authors, below. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. In America he influenced Fenimore Cooper and Nathaniel Hawthorne, amongst others. 48, 49. Relationship with Romanticism, edit. Romance is closely associated with the Romantic movement. 50. The Gothic novel, and Romanticism influenced the development of the modern literary romance. Hugh Walpole's Gothic novels combine elements of the medieval romance, which he deemed too fanciful, and the modern novel, which he considered to be too confined to strict realism. 51. Romanticism influenced the romance through its emphasis on emotion and individualism as well as glorification of all the past and nature, and preference for the medieval rather than the classical, its emphasis on extremes of emotion and its reaction against the perceived constraints of rationalism imposed by the Enlightenment, and associated classical aesthetic values, were also a significant influence. 52. Walter Scott's novels are frequently described as historical romances, and Northrop Frye suggested the general principle that most historical novels are romances. 53. In addition to Walpole, Scott and the Brontes, other romance writers, as defined by Scott, include E.T.A. Hoffmann, Victor Hugo, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Robert Louis Stevenson, and Thomas Hardy. In the 20th century, examples are Joseph Conrad, John Cowper Powys, and more recently, J.R.R. Tolkien and A.S. Bit, whose best-selling novel Possession, a Romance won the Booker Prize in 1990. Love Romance, edit. The genre of works of extended prose fiction dealing with romantic love existed in classical Greece. 54. 5 ancient Greek romance novels have survived to the present day in a state of near completion: Charias and Callihu, Leucippe and Cleitophon, Daphnis and Chloe, the Ephesian tale, and the Ethiopian tale. 54. Precursors of the modern popular love romance can also be found in the sentimental novel Pamela, or Virtue Rewarded, by Samuel Richardson, published in 1740. Pamela was the first popular novel to be based on a courtship as told from the perspective of the heroine. Unlike many of the novels of the time, Pamela had a happy ending, when after Mr. B attempts unsuccessfully to seduce and rape Pamela multiple times, he eventually rewards her virtue by sincerely proposing an equitable marriage to her. 55. Richardson began writing Pamela as a book of letter templates. 56. In the tradition of the conduct book, that evolved into a novel. In the early part of the Victorian era, the Bronte sisters, like Austen, wrote literary fiction that influenced later popular fiction. 57. Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre incorporates elements of both the Gothic novel and Elizabethan drama, and demonstrates the flexibility of the romance novel form. 57. One 2007 British poll presented Wuthering Heights as the greatest love story of all time. 58. However, some of the novel's admirers consider it not a love story at all but an exploration of evil and abuse. 59. Helen Small sees Wuthering Heights as being both one of the greatest love. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF stories in the English language, while at the same time a most brutal revenge narratives. 60. Some critics suggest that reading Wuthering Heights as a love story not only romanticizes abusive men and toxic relationships but goes against Bronte's clear intent. 59. Moreover, while a passionate, doomed, death-transcending relationship between Heathcliff and Catherine Earnshaw Linton forms the core of the novel, 59, Wuthering Heights consistently subverts the romantic narrative. Our first encounter with Heathcliff shows him to be a nasty bully. Later, Bronte puts in Heathcliff's mouth an explicit warning not to turn him into a Byronic hero. After Isabella elopes with him, he sneers that she did so under a delusion, picturing in me a hero of romance. 59. Emily Bronte was influenced by Walter Scott, the Gothic novel, and Romanticism more broadly. 61, 62. Critic Christopher Learman Haupt, writing about A Espet's Possession, a romance in the New York Times, noted that what he describes as the wonderfully extravagant novel is pointedly subtitled a romance. 63. He says it is at once a detective story and an adultery novel. 63. Many famous literary fiction romance novels, unlike most mass-market novels, end tragically, including Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, The Thorn Birds by Colleen McCullough, Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami, Atonement by Ian McEwan, and The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. 64, 65. Genre fiction romance novels, first developed in the 19th century, started to become more popular after the First World War. In 1919, E.M. Hull's novel The Sheik was published in the United Kingdom. The novel, which became hugely popular, was adapted into a movie, 1921. 66. The mass-market version of the historical romance is seen as beginning in 1921, when Georgette Heyer published The Black Moth. This is set in 1751, but many of Heyer's novels were inspired by Jane Austen's novels and are set around the time Austen lived, in the later Regency period. Because Heyer's romances are set more than 100 years earlier, she includes carefully researched historical detail to help her readers understand the period. 67. Unlike other popular love romance novels of the time, Heyer's novels used the setting as a major plot device. Her characters often exhibit 20th-century sensibilities, and more conventional characters in the novels point out the heroine's eccentricities, such as wanting to marry for love. 68. In the 1930s, the British publishers Mills and Boon began releasing hardback romance novels. The books were sold through weekly two-penny libraries. In the 1950s, the company began offering the books for sale through newsagents across the United Kingdom. 69. Sensation novel, edit. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. R. L. Stevenson, Treasure Island. The sensation novel was a literary genre of fiction that achieved peak popularity in Great Britain in the 1860s and 1870s. 70. Its literary forebears included the melodramatic novels and the Newgate novels. It also drew on the Gothic and Romantic genres of fiction. 71. Whereas romance and realism had traditionally been contradictory modes of literature, they were brought together in sensation fiction of the Victorian era, combining romance and realism in a way that strains both modes to the limit. 72. 73. The loss of identity is seen in many sensation fiction stories because this was a common social anxiety. 74. Sensation fiction is commonly seen to have emerged as a definable genre in the wake of three novels: Wilkie Collins's The Woman in White, 1859-60, Ellen, Mrs. Henry, Wood's East Lynne, 1861, and Mary Elizabeth Budden's Lady Audley's Secret, 1862. 75. Charles Dickens' Great Expectations, 1861, is another example. 76. Adventure fiction, edit. Critic Don D. Amosar defines the adventure fiction genre as follows. An adventure is an event or series of events that happens outside the course of the protagonist's ordinary life, usually accompanied by danger, often by physical action. Adventure stories almost always move quickly, and the pace of the plot is at least as important as characterization, setting and other elements of a creative work. 77. D. Amosar argues that adventure fiction makes the element of danger the focus, hence he argues that Charles Dickens's novel A Tale of Two Cities is an adventure novel because the protagonists are in constant danger of being imprisoned or killed, whereas Dickens's Great Expectations is not, because Pip's encounter with the convict is an adventure, but that scene is only a device to advance the main plot, which is not truly an adventure. 77. The standard plot of medieval romances was a series of adventures following a plot framework as old as Heliodorus, and so durable as to be still alive in Hollywood movies. A hero would undergo a first set of adventures before he met his lady. A separation would follow, with a second set of adventures leading to a final reunion. Variations kept the genre alive. From the mid-19th century onwards, when mass literacy grew, adventure became a popular subgenre of fiction. Although not exploited to its fullest, adventure has explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Seen many changes over the years, from being constrained to stories of knights in armor to stories of high-tech espionages. Examples of that period include Sir Walter Scott, Alexandre Dumas, Perrier, 78, Jules Verne, Bronte sisters, H. Rider Haggard, Victor Hugo, 79, Emilio Salgari, Louis Henry Bessenard, Thomas Mayne Reid, Sax Rohmer, Edgar Wallace, and Robert Louis Stevenson. Rider Haggard, 1856–1925, author of King Solomon's Mines, Romantic Adventure, 80, She, A History of Adventure, was an English writer of adventure fiction set in exotic locations, predominantly Africa, and a pioneer of the Lost World literary genre. 81. He was part of the literary reaction against domestic realism that has been called a romance revival. 82. Other writers following this trend were Robert Louis Stevenson, George MacDonald, and William Morris. 82. Robert Louis Stevenson wrote romances, including historical romances, in which adventure is often a prominent element. Adventure, heroism, chivalry, amongst other things, are associated with the word romance according to the OED. These include Treasure Island, 1883, an adventure novel about piracy and buried treasure; Prince Otto, 1885, an action romance set in the imaginary Germanic state; Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 1886, a kind and intelligent physician turns into a psychopathic monster after imbibing a drug intended to separate good from evil in a personality; a Gothic novel, Kidnapped, 1886, an historical novel, The Black Arrow, A Tale of the Two Roses, 1888, an historical adventure novel and romance set during the Wars of the Roses; and The Master of Ballantrae, A Winter's Tale, 1889, a tale of revenge, set in Scotland, America and India. Scientific romances, edit. H. G. Wells, edit. H. G. Wells's genius was his ability to create a stream of brand new, wholly original stories out of thin air. Originality was Wells's calling card. In a 6-year stretch from 1895 to 1901, he produced a stream of what he called scientific romance novels, which included The Time Machine, The Island of Dr. Moreau, The Invisible Man, The War of the Worlds and The First Men in the Moon. Cultural historian John Higgs, The Guardian. 83. Other writers, edit. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. First Men in the Moon, 1901. Frontispiece, illustration. Caption, I was progressing in great leaps and bounds. In the United Kingdom, Wells's work was a key model for the British scientific romance, and other writers in that mode, such as Olaf Stapledon, 84, J. D. Beresford, 85, S. Fowler Wright, 86, and Naomi Mitchison, 87, all drew on Wells's example. Wells was also an important influence on British science fiction of the period after the Second World War, with Arthur C. Clarke and Brian Aldiss expressing strong admiration for Wells's work. 88, 89, The Space Machine, a scientific romance, by English writer Christopher Priest, published in 1976, is another work influenced by Wells. This novel effectively combines the storylines of the H.G. Wells novels The War of the Worlds, 1898, and The Time Machine, 1895, into the same reality. Action takes place both in Victorian England and on Mars. In an interview with the Paris Review, Vladimir Nabokov described Wells as his favorite writer when he was a boy and a great artist. 90. He went on to cite The Passionate Friends, Anne Veronica, The Time Machine, and The Country of the Blind as superior to anything else written by Wells's British contemporaries. Nabokov said, his sociological cogitations can be safely ignored, of course, but his romances and fantasies are superb. 90. Other authors and works, edit. As noted, many European languages do not distinguish romances from novels. In France, for example, le roman is the term used for a novel. United Kingdom, edit. Though Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is infused with elements of the Gothic novel and the Romantic movement, Brian Aldiss has argued that it should be considered the first true science fiction story. 91. See H. G. Wells's scientific romance above. R. D. Blackmore described Lorna Doone, A Romance of Exmoor, 1869, in his preface, as a romance and not a historical novel, because the author neither dares, nor desires, to claim for it the dignity or cumber it with the difficulty of an historical novel. As such, it combines elements of traditional romance, of Sir Walter Scott's historical novel tradition, of the pastoral tradition, of traditional Victorian values, and of the contemporary sensation novel trend. 92. Thomas Hardy classified his novels under three headings: novels of character and environment, such as Tess of the D'Urbervilles; novels of ingenuity, such as A Laodicean; romances and fantasies, such as A Pair of Blue Eyes, 1873, The Trumpet Major, 1880, Two on a Tower, a romance, 1882, A Group of Noble Dames, 1891, a collection of short stories, The Well-Beloved. A Sketch of a Temperament, 1897, first published as a serial from 1892. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Thomas Hardy, Two on a Tower. The Scarlet Letter, 1850. Amongst 20th-century writers of romance are Joseph Conrad, Mary Webb, and John Cowper Powys. Joseph Conrad wrote Romance, 1905, and The Rescue, A Romance of the Shallows, 1920. Literary critic John Sutherland refers to Mary Webb as the pioneer of the genre of soil and gloom romance. 93. John Cowper Powys describes Walter Scott's romances as by far the most powerful literary influence of my life. 94. In A Glastonbury romance, Powys makes use of Arthurian mythology and the Holy Grail story. Porreus, a romance of the Dark Ages, is set during the end of Roman rule in Britain, with King Arthur, Merlin, Ninoi, Lady of the Lake, and two survivors of an ancient race of giants. When John Cowper Powys began Owen Glendower in April 1937, he referred to it in his diary as my romance about Owen Glendower. 95. But then, in subsequent years, he generally referred to it as a historical novel, and it was so subtitled when it was published. 96. America, edit. The Pilot, A Tale of the Sea is an early historical romance by James Fenimore Cooper. Its subject is the life of a naval pilot during the American Revolution. It is often considered the earliest example of nautical fiction in American literature. A sailor by profession, Cooper had undertaken to surpass Walter Scott's Pirate, 1821, in seamanship. Cooper's most famous romance is Last of the Mohicans. According to Susan Fenimore Cooper, Cooper first conceived the idea for the book while visiting the Adirondack Mountains in 1825 with a party of English gentlemen. 97. The party passed through the Catskills, an area with which Cooper was already familiar. They passed on to Lake George and Glens Falls. Impressed with the caves behind the falls, one member of the party suggested that here was the very scene for a romance. Cooper promised that a book should be written, in which these caves should have a place. The idea of a romance essentially Indian in character then first suggesting itself to his mind. 98. Cooper has been called the American Walter Scott. 99. Critic George Lukács likened Fenimore Cooper's character Bumpo in the Leatherstocking Tales to Sir Walter Scott's middling characters, because they do not represent the extremes of society. These figures can serve as tools for the social and cultural exploration of historical events, without directly portraying the history itself. 100. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. In the mid-19th century, Hawthorne and Melville wrote romances. Nathaniel Hawthorne wrote The Scarlet Letter, a romance, 1850, The House of the Seven Gables, a romance, the Blithedale Romance. Herman Melville described Moby Dick, 1851, as a romance in a letter of June 27 to his English publisher. My dear sir, in the latter part of the coming autumn I shall have ready a new work, and I write you now to propose its publication in England. The book is a romance of adventure, founded upon certain wild legends in the southern sperm whale fisheries, and illustrated by the author's own personal experience, of 2 years and more, as a harpooner. 101. In the 20th century, Flannery O'Connor, 1925–1964, often wrote in a sardonic Southern Gothic style and relied heavily on regional settings and grotesque characters, often in violent situations. Her stories usually focus on morally flawed characters, frequently interacting with people with disabilities or disabled themselves, as O'Connor was, while the issue of race often appears. Most of her works feature disturbing elements. 102. Germany, edit. See also, Stimmungsdrang. E. T. Hoffmann, 1776–1822, was a German Romantic author of fantasy and Gothic horror. 103, 104, Ludwig Tieck, Heinrich von Kleist, and E. T. Hoffmann also profoundly influenced the development of European Gothic horror in the 19th century. 105. Hoffmann's novel The Devil's Elixirs, 1815, was influenced by Lewis's The Monk and even mentions it. The novel also explores the motif of the doppelganger, the term coined by another German author and supporter of Hoffmann, Jean Paul, in his humorous novel Siebenkäs, 1796. 1797. 106. France, edit. Further information, 19th century French literature Romanticism. Balzac was an inheritor of Walter Scott's style of the historical novel, 107, publishing in 1829 Les Chouans, a historical work in the manner of Sir Walter Scott, 108, set in 1799 Brittany. This was subsequently incorporated into La Comédie Humaine. The bulk La Comédie Humaine, however, takes place during the Bourbon Restoration and the July Monarchy, and Balzac is regarded as one of the founders of realism in European literature. 109. Srafita, with its theme of androgyny, contrasts with the realism of most of the author's best-known works, delving into the fantastic and the supernatural to illustrate philosophical themes. Amongst writers of adventure novels were Alexandre Dumas, Jules Verne, and Louis Henry Bessenard. Dumas was the author of the D'Artagnan romances, which includes the 3. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Musketeers, which is also a historical novel. Jules Verne, 1828–1905, was the author of a series of Best-selling novels that includes Journey to the Center of the Earth, 1864, 20,000. Leagues Under the Seas, 1870, and Around the World in 80 Days, 1872. His novels, always very well documented, are generally set in the second half of the 19th century, taking into account the technological advances of the time. Louis-Henri Bessenard, 1847–1910, was dubbed the French Rider Haggard during his lifetime, but better known today in Eastern Europe than in Francophone countries. Bessenard's best-known book Le Capitaine Cascou, 1901, was set at the time of the Boer War. L'en fut, 1898. Fictionalized Cuba's struggle for independence. Aspiring to emulate Jules Verne, Bessenard also turned out several science fiction novels, notably Les Secrets de Monsieur Synthus, 1888, and Dix Millénaires dans un bloc de glace, 1890, both translated by Brian Stableford in 2013 under the title Monsieur Synthesis. 110, circular reference. Victor Hugo's The Hunchback of Notre Dame is a Gothic, historical novel. Italy, edit. Alessandro Manzoni's The Betrothed, 1827, is an historical novel set in Lombardy in 1628, during the years of Spanish rule, which has similarities with Walter Scott's historic novel Ivanhoe, although evidently distinct. George Lukács, in the historical novel, 1969, comments: in Italy Scott found a successor who, though in a single, isolated work, nevertheless broadened his tendencies with superb originality, in some respects surpassing him. We refer, of course, to Manzoni's I Promessi Sposi, The Betrothed. Scott himself recognized Manzoni's greatness. When in Milan Manzoni told him that he was his pupil, Scott replied that in that case Manzoni's was his best work. It is, however, very characteristic that while Scott was able to write a profusion of novels about English and Scottish society, Manzoni confined himself to this single masterpiece, 69p. Emilio Salgari, 1862–1911, was a writer of action-adventure swashbucklers and a pioneer of science fiction. 111. Many of his most popular novels have been adapted as comics, animated series, and feature films. He is considered the father of Italian adventure fiction and Italian pop culture, and the grandfather of the spaghetti western. 112. Russia, edit. Walter Scott was perhaps more popular in Russia, in the late 1820s and 1830s, than anywhere on the continent, through the French translations of Auguste Jean-Baptiste de Falconpret. Amongst pilgrims to Abbotsford, were a large proportion of Russian writers, diplomats, soldiers. 113. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Walter Scott very profoundly influenced Pushkin, in his capacity as a poet, a collector of folk songs and the originator of the historical novel based on life. We know that Pushkin's library contained not only Walter Scott's novels, but also his poetical works. 114. Tolstoy's great-great-grandson Vladimir Tolstoy, 36, inspected the recently renovated Scott Monument in Edinburgh and suggested that without the inspiration of Scott's writing genius his famous ancestor might never have penned War and Peace. Mr. Tolstoy, the director of the Leo Tolstoy Museum and president of the Russian Museums Association, said his great-great-grandfather drew great inspiration from Scott's novels, particularly Waverley, Ivanhoe, and Rob Roy. He also noted that in the library of the Tolstoy Museum in Russia there are many of Scott's books, including some early editions. He said some of Scott's books in the museum's library had comments written by Leo Tolstoy beside the text, but he would not reveal what they said. 115. Spain, edit. Further information, Romanticism in Spanish literature. The historical novel developed in imitation of Walter Scott. 80 of his works had been translated. The most notable Spanish authors are Enrique Gil y Carrasco (1815–1846), the author of El Señor de Bembibre, the best Spanish historical novel, written in imitation of Scott, Francisco Navarro Villoslada, 1818–1895, who wrote a series of historical novels when the Romantic genre was in decline and realism was coming to be at its height. His novels were inspired by Basque traditions and were set in the medieval era. His most famous work is Amaya, o los Vascos en el siglo VIII. Amaya, or the Basques of the 8th century, in which the Basques and the Visigoths ally themselves against the Muslim invasion. Other authors include Mariano José de Lara, Serafín Estebanez Calderón and Francisco Martínez de la Rosa. Citations, edit. 1 Essay on Romance, Prose Works Volume 6, p. 129, quoted in Introduction to Walter Scott's Quinton Duruard, ed. Susan Maining. Oxford, Oxford University Press, 1992, pxxv. 2 J. Acudden, The Penguin Dictionary of Literary Terms and Literary Theory 4th edition, revised C. Preston. London, Penguin, 1999, p. 761. 3 Walter Scott, Essay on Romance, p. 129. 4 Margaret and Doody. The True Story of the Novel. New Brunswick, N.J., Rutgers University Press. 1996, p. 15. 5 Pamela Regis. A Natural History of the Romance Novel. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, University of Pennsylvania Press, 2003. 6 Margaret Doody, p. 19. 7 Timothy Roberts, 2011. Jane Eyre. p. 8. 8 Pamela Regis. A Natural History of the Romance Novel. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, University of Pennsylvania Press, 2003. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. 9 David Punter, The Gothic, London, Huyler Blackwell, 2004, p. 178. 10 Margaret and Doody. Introduction, The True Story of the Novel, pp. 1–11. 11 Joel Porte, The Romance in America, Studies in Cooper, Poe, Hawthorne, Melville, and James. Middletown, Con, Wesleyan University Press, 1969, 95 p. 12 Margaret Doody, p. 19. 13 Timothy Roberts, 2011. Jane Eyre. p. 8. 14 Pamela Regis. A Natural History of the Romance Novel. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, University of Pennsylvania Press, 2003. 15 From Romance, The Hutchinson Unabridged Encyclopedia with Atlas and Weather Guide, edited by Helican. Helican, 2018, NP, online. 16 Diana Waggoner, The Hills of Faraway, A Guide to Fantasy, 37p, ISBN 0-689-108466. 17 John Grant, Gulliver Unravels, Generic Fantasy and the Loss of Subversion. 18 Alec Austin, Quality in Epic Fantasy. 19 Jane Yolen, Introduction p8 After the King, Stories in Honor of J.R.R. Tolkien, ed., Martin H. Greenberg, ISBN 0-312-85175-8. 20 Lewis, C.S. 1994. The Discarded Image, Canto ed. Cambridge, Cambridge University Press. p9. ISBN 978-0-521-47735-2. 21 Chris Baldick, 2008. Chivalric Romance. The Oxford Dictionary of Literary Terms, 3rd ed. Oxford University Press. ISBN 978-0-19-172717-7. OCLC 4811919031. 22 Raphael Line. Shakespeare's Late Work. Oxford, Oxford University Press, 2007, pp. 6 and 99. 23 C. Paul Scarron, The Comical Romance, Chapter XXI. Which perhaps will not be found very entertaining, London, 1700, with its call for the new genre. Online edition. 24 Edith Grossman about Don Quixote's tragedy and comedy. A discussion held in New York City on the 5th of February, 2009 by Words Without Borders, YouTube. 25 Faulkner, Peter, 1983. The Writer. In Parry, Linda, ed. William Morris Textiles. London. Weidenfeld and Nicholson. ISBN 978-0-297-78196-7. 26 Faulkner 1983, p. 47. 27 Lynn Carter, ed. Kingdoms of Sorcery, p. 39. Doubleday and Company, Garden City, NY, 1976. 28 Harold Bloom, editor, William Morris in Classic Fantasy Writers. Chelsea House Publishers, 1994. ISBN 0-7910-2204-8, p. 153. 29 Humphrey Carpenter, ed., The Letters of J.R.R. Tolkien, Boston, Houghton Mifflin, 1981, letter #239. To Peter Sabo St. Mahalai, draft, October 1971. 30 Gardner Dozois, preface. Modern Classics of Fantasy. New York, St. Martin's Press, 1997. pp. 16. 17. 31 Walpole, Henry, 1765. The Castle of Otranto, A Gothic Story, 2nd edition preface. London. p. 6. 32 The Castle of Otranto, The Creepy Tale That Launched Gothic Fiction. BBC News. BBC. 13. December, 2014. 33 Missing, Sophie, the 13th of March, 2010. The Castle of Otranto by Horace Walpole. The Guardian. Retrieved the 18th of September, 2018. 34 Clemens, Valdine. The Return of the Repressed Albany. 1999. State University of New York Press. 30 PISBN 0-7914-4328-0. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. 35 Strawberry Hill, Horace Walpole's Fantasy Castle, to open its doors again. The Guardian. Retrieved 18 July 2021. 36 Charles Dickens and the Gothic, 2.11. The Cambridge History of the Gothic. Cambridge. University Press. Retrieved 18 July 2021. 37 Charles Dickens, Victorian Gothic and Bleak House. British Library. Retrieved 18 July 2021. 38 Allingham, Philip V. The 9th of March 2001. The Genres of Charles Dickens' Great Expectations. Positioning the Novel, 1. The Victorian Web. Retrieved 26 April 2013. 39 Davis, Paul, 2007. Critical Companion to Charles Dickens, a literary reference to his life and work. New York, Facts on File, Inc. pp. 134135. ISBN 978-0-8160-6407-6. 40 ABC The Bloomsbury Guide to English Literature, ed. Marion Wynne Davis. New York, Prentice Hall. 1990, p. 885. 41 The Bloomsbury Guide to English Literature, ed. Marion Wynne Davis, p. 884. 42 AB The Norton Anthology of English Literature, Volume 2, 7th edition, EDMH. Abrams. New York, Norton. 2000, pp. 2021. 43 Abstract, James Watt, Sir Walter Scott and the Medievalist Novel. The Oxford Handbook of Victorian Medievalism, ed. Joanne Parker and Karina Wagner. Oxford UP, 2020. 44 Abstract, Epitaph, ed. The Reception of Sir Walter Scott in Europe. Series, The Reception of British and Irish Authors in Europe. Bloomsbury, London, 2014. ISBN 978-1-4725-3547-4. 45 Abstract, Epitaph, ed. The Reception of Sir Walter Scott in Europe. 46 Paul Barnaby, Restoration Politics and Sentimental Poetics in a J.B. de Falconprit's translations of Sir Walter Scott. Translation and Literature, Spring 2011, Volume 20, Number 1, Readings in Romantic. Translation, Spring 2011, pp. 6-28. 47 The Reception of Sir Walter Scott in Europe. 48 George Decker, James Fenimore Cooper, The American Scott. New York, Barnes & Noble, 1967. 49 Will Stevenson and Mimosa Stevenson, Scott's Influence on Hawthorne. Studies in Scottish Literature Volume 28, Issue 1, 1993, Article 11. 50 David Punter, The Gothic, London, Hwyler Blackwell, 2004, p. 178. 51 David Punter, The Gothic, p. 178. 52 carat Romanticism in Britannica Online. 53 carat Northrop Frye's Anatomy of Criticism, 1957. New York, Athenaeum, 1966, p. 307. 54 carat A. B. Reardon, Brian P. 1989. Collected Ancient Greek Novels. Berkeley, University of California Press. pp. 116. ISBN 0-520-04306-5. Retrieved 28 May 2017. 55 carat Regis, 2003, pp. 63, 64, 66. 56 carat Doody, Margaret, the 21st of June, 2018. An Introduction to Pamela, or Virtue Rewarded. The British Library. Retrieved 16th of December, 2019. 57 carat A. B. Regis, 2003, p. 85. 58 carat Marin Wainwright, Emily hits heights in poll to find greatest love story. The Guardian, the 10th of August, 2007. 59 carat A. B. C. D. Young, Kathy, the 26th of August, 2018. Emily Bronte at 200, Is Wuthering Heights a Love Story? Washington Examiner. 60 carat Introduction to Wuthering Heights. Edited by Ian Jack and Introduction and Notes by Helen Small. Oxford University Press, 2009, p. 7. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. 61 carat Elizabeth Gaskell The Life of Charlotte Bronte, London, Smith, Elder and Company, 1857, p. 104. 62 carat Winifred Gerin. Byron's Influence on the Brontes. Keats Shelley Memorial Bulletin, 1966, 17 p. 63 carat A. B. Christopher Learman Haupt, Books of the Times, When There Was Such a Thing as Romantic Love, The New York Times, the 25th of October, 1990. Retrieved 23rd of January, 2014. 64 carat 9 Love Stories with Tragic Endings. Encyclopedia Britannica. Retrieved 12th of March, 2021. 65 carat 9 Tragic Love Stories to Read After Seeing Me Before You. Entertainment Weekly. Retrieved 12th of March, 2021. 66 carat Regis, 2003, pp. 115117. 67 carat Regis, 2003, pp. 125 to 126. 68 carat Regis, 2003, p. 127. 69 carat Mills and Boon, Our History. Harlequin Mills and Boon. Archived from the original on 13 October 2007. Retrieved 19 July 2007. 70 carat Ialsbed, The Cambridge Guide to Literature in English, 1995, p. 844. 71 carat Muller, C. Victorian Sensationalism, The Short Stories of Wilkie Collins. UNISA English Studies. 11.1. 1973 12-13. Web. 8 June, 2014. 72 carat Hughes, Winifred. The Maniac in the Cellar. Princeton, Princeton University, 1980. Print. 73 carat Hughes, Winifred, 2002. Brantlinger, Patrick, ed. A companion to the Victorian novel. Oxford. Blackwell. p. 261. 74 Pickett Lynn. The Newgate Novel and Sensation Fiction, 1830–1868. Crime Fiction. ed. Martin. Priestman. Cambridge, Cambridge University, 2003. 19–39. Print. 75 Losberg, Jonathan. Ideology of Narrative Form in Sensation. University of California, 1986. Chester. Web. 10 June, 2014. 76 Philip L. Marcus, Theme and Suspense in the Plot of Great Expectations, Dickens Studies Volume 2. Number 2, May, 1966, pp. 57–73. 77 Abd Amasa, Don. Encyclopedia of Adventure Fiction. Facts on File Library of World Literature. Infobase Publishing, 2009, pp. 7–8. 78 Green, Martin Burgess. 7 Types of Adventure Tale, An Etiology of a Major Genre. Penn State Press, 1991, pp. 71–. 79 Tavs, Brian. The Romance of Adventure, the Genre of Historical Adventure Movies. University Press of Mississippi, 1993, p. 60. 80 Rider Haggard, Encyclopedia Britannica. 81 Watts, James, 2021. Land Reform, Henry Rider Haggard, and the Politics of Imperial Settlement. 1900–1920. The Historical Journal. 65, 24154352, 10.1017/S0018246X210000613. ISSN 0018-246X. 82 AB Sir H. Rider Haggard, British author. Encyclopedia Britannica. Retrieved 15 March, 2020. 83 Higgs, John, 13 August, 2016. H. G. Wells's prescient visions of the future remain unsurpassed. The Guardian. Retrieved 19 March, 2019. 84 Andy Sawyer, William, Olaf Stapledon, 1886–1950, in 50 Key Figures in Science Fiction. New York, Routledge, 2010. ISBN 0-203-87470-6, pp 205–210. 85 Richard Blyler, John Davis Beresford, 1873–1947, in Darren Harris Fane, ed. British Fantasy and Science Fiction Writers Before World War I. Detroit, Me, Gale Research, 1997. pp. 27–34. ISBN 0-8103. 9941-5. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. 86 Brian Stableford, Against the New Gods, The Speculative Fiction of S. Fowler Wright. In Against the New Gods and Other Essays on Writers of Imaginative Fiction, Wildside Press LLC, 2009. ISBN 1-4344. 5743–5, pp 990. 87 Mitchison, Naomi, In Science Fiction and Fantasy Literature, A Checklist, 1774, with contemporary science fiction authors 2. Robert Reginald, Douglas Menville, Mary Burgess. Detroit. Gale Research Company. ISBN 0-8103-1051-1 p. 1002. 88 Michael D. Sharp, Popular Contemporary Writers, Marshall Cavendish, 2005. ISBN 0-7614-7601-6 p. 422. 89 Michael R. Collins, Brian Aldiss. Mercer Island, W.A., Starmont House, 1986. ISBN 0-91673-74-6 p. 60. 90 A. B. Gold, interviewed by Herbert Vladimir Nabokov, The Art of Fiction No. 40. The Paris Review. Retrieved 9 February 2017. 91 The Detached Retina, Aspects of SF and Fantasy by Brian Aldiss, 1995, p. 78. 92 Blackmore, R.D. 1908, Lorna Doone, A Romance of Exmoor, Duneland edition, with introduction and notes by H. Snowden Ward. 93 Sutherland, John. Bestsellers, A Very Short Introduction, Oxford University Press, 2007, p. 113. ISBN 0-19-157869-X. 94 Autobiography, 1934. London, MacDonald, 1967, p. 66. 95 Quoted in W. J. Keith, Aspects of John Cowper Powis's Owen Glendower, London, The Powys Society, 2008, p. 20. 96 W. J. Keith, Aspects of John Cowper Powis's Owen Glendower, pp. 20-21. 97 Cooper, Susan Fenimore, 1861. Pages and Pictures from the Writings of James Fenimore. Cooper. W.A. Townsend and Company pp. 121131. 98 Cooper, Susan Fenimore, 1876-1884. Household edition of the works of J. Fenimore Cooper. Houghton, Mifflin and Company p. 11 Xliv. Retrieved the 11th of September, 2010. 99 Phillips, Mary Elizabeth, 1913. James Fenimore Cooper. John Lane Company, New York, London. p. 160. 100 The Historical Novel. Penguin Books, 1969, pp. 69-72. 101 Herman Melville, The Writings of Herman Melville, Volume 14. Edited by Lynn Horth. Evanston and Chicago, Northwestern University Press and the Newbery Libra, 1993, p. 163. 102 O'Connor, Flannery, 1979. Fitzgerald, Sally, ed. The Habit of Being, Letters of Flannery. O'Connor. Farrar, Straus and Giras. p. 90. ISBN 9780374521042. 103 Penrith Gorth, E.T.A. Hoffman in E. F. Blyler, Supernatural Fiction Writers, Fantasy and Horror. New York, Scribners, 1985. pp. 111120. ISBN 0-684-17808-7. 104 Mike Ashley, Hoffman, E. Rnst, T. Heoda, A. Medeus, in St. James Guide to Horror, Ghost, and Gothic Writers, ed. David Pringle. Detroit, St. James Press /Gale, 1998. ISBN 978-1-55862-206-7, pp. 668-69. 105 Hyde Crawford, The Origins of the Literary Vampire. Lanham, Rowman and Littlefield, 2016, p. 13. 106 Hoggle, J. The Cambridge Companion to Gothic Fiction, Cambridge University Press, 2002, p. 105. 122. 107 Lukács 92-96. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. 108 Liukanen, Petri. On Order Balzac. Books and Writers. Finland, Kuusankoski Public Library. Archived from the original on 24 September 2014. 109 Class, O. 26 November 2017. Encyclopedia of Literary Translation into English, A.L. Taylor and Francis. ISBN 978-1-884964-36-7. Retrieved 26 November 2017 via Google Books. 110 article on French Wikipedia. 111 Briony, Simone, Camriati, Danielle, 18 July 2019. Simone Briony and Danielle Camriati, Italian. Science Fiction, The Other in Literature and Film. New York, Palgrave, 2019. ISBN 978-3-030-19326. 3. 112 Giovanni Arpino, Emilio Salgari, Il Padre Digliero, Mondadori 1991. 113 Glebe Struve, Russian Friends and Correspondence of Sir Walter Scott. Comparative Literature. Autumn, 1950, Volume 2, Number 4, Autumn, 1950, pp. 307-326. Duke University Press. 114 Peter Struve, Walter Scott and Russia. The Slavonic and East European Review, January, 1933, Volume 11. Number 32, January, 1933, pp. 397-410. 115 The Herald, What Mr. Tolstoy Thinks of Scott, 12 May 1999. Categories: Fiction, Historical Fiction, Literary Genres, Romance Genres, Romanticism. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF.